Let's get ready to rumble!
Awesome.
In the red corner we have Dave Pickerel.
Hello.
In the yellow corner we have Tom Fallows.
Hi.
In the green corner we have Stuart Green.
Clever.
Hi Curtis, how's it going?
And today's commentator is Curtis Owen, and I want a good clean match today. Ding!
That's pretty funny.
Anyone wondering why the MGM logo was at the front there? They purchased United Artists, who
And that-
originally produced this in 1979.
Well, and the UA logo, that's a new logo as well. That's not the original UA logo.
That's right. And the film
the
there,
film we're doing is Rocky 2.
Rocky 2.
of course, yeah.
hence all the boxing jargon.
I just did that for
Rocky
I love it. I didn't
IR.
realise we were doing a
Oh,
boxing movie.
yeah.
And Rocky films is always has the title flowed across. Obviously, after the sequels only, isn't it? It's not the first one, if I remember rightly.
Yeah,
That's
and
right,
And
yeah.
every single film starts with footage from the last, which is
That's true,
interesting
yeah.
as well. You know.
Except
Except
for
yeah.
Rocky Balboa.
Which we can talk about. I think it's within that spoiler range now. It's been 4 years.
Yeah, we
I think,
talk
so
about Rocky
We
Balboa.
can talk about that.
I think we've got some stuff to say about it. So, and he actually shows quite a lot of the first film, doesn't he?
It's
almost-
virtually the
It's
last
like an
10
8-minute
minutes.
yeah.
So it's,
Yeah,
it's
8-10 minute
immense.
sequence,
Which, as a cinema goer, I do find I just want it to get going. I find because I know this, I know what happened. It's like,
But then again,
you know,
though, I guess this was the time before home video, and I know these films may have been on TV and stuff like that, but
That's a good
you
point,
may
Dave.
not have seen this for 5 years.
And was this
That's
actually
right.
3 years after the original?
it
Yeah.
came out 3 years after.
And I guess
Rocky.
people who were obviously in that
Mm.
film, first, saw the first film at the cinema, we do want that kind of like a
Like a recap.
And-
yeah, like a recap,
yeah.
I guess. You know, if
The-
Rocky is his character is like this guy who's kind of, you know, underdog who's built himself up to a great fighter. You know.
That's right. Also, it was really the beginning of the contemporary sequel. Films have always been serialized, going back, you know, to film serials like Flash
Mm.
Gordon. But it was really in the mid-70s, starting with The Godfather and the sequel, where the sequels would be called Part 2.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
wouldn't come up with a new title for the sequel, you know, like in James Bond films
Oh, yeah.
or something. They'd always have a new
Yeah.
title. They started saying Part 2. There was The Godfather Part 2, 1974, French Connection Part 2, 1975, Jaws 2,
Yeah.
1978, Rocky 2. 79, and then it just proceeded throughout the 80s. I mean, one of the first ones in the 80s, I think, was Halloween 2.
That's true, yeah.
And
Correct me if I'm wrong
Friday
as well.
13th positive.
I think I might have read somewhere that it was the most successful sequel before what's it called?
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So it held the title for what, 2 years?
Yeah.
Um,
I think as well when you competed against Star Wars, I mean, most things come unstuck, don't they? I mean, obviously Rocky 2 still did amazingly well. I mean, you know,
yeah.
it's like,
Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars is a phenomenon, isn't it?
Mm,
You don't judge it by kind of mortal standards.
And I think how we said as this film starts, the obviously the first bit of the last film,
Mhm.
as you saying, Dave, that like home video and things wasn't around. You're saying like it's a bad thing. You want the film to get going, but what I want to say is that I think it's one of them films. It's you don't see many films that continue straight from where the last one ended.
That's
you know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and as Curtis just said, that all the Rocky films do that, don't they? They always look a straight
Yeah.
continuation until the most recent one,
Mm.
Rocky Balboa.
Mm.
They always picked up right where the last one left off.
Yeah.
I thought.
I was gonna say, do you
Sorry.
find as well? I mean, we talked about this. Is the only other film I can think of off the top of my head, unless we can think as we go along, is the Phantasm movies. They're exactly the same.
Oh yeah.
They start as the last one
Yeah,
ends. You know
sure.
what I mean?
Well,
And,
yeah,
you know, it's a great way to follow on a film.
And even to the
it's
extent
almost
if-
like a true sequel, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
It's a true continuation
They're
of a
not
story.
trying to do something new,
Yeah.
separate. They've got to continue from
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Got to figure out where they're going to go.
Yeah,
with it.
exactly. There's no cheating.
Yeah.
There's no
even
cheating,
even
that's
to
what
the
I like about
extent
it.
of obviously the film's continuation straight after the first movie, like, you know, the previous commentary we did, Halloween 2.
That's right. Yeah.
We go straight into the action after this fight.
There's one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a continuation of the same night. And
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
we start here and we go into the same night, the night in the hospital.
But it's 3 years later in age.
Yeah,
like,
and then
so
it-
they
then it-
haven't- they've aged the actors, but
Yeah, but
only
then it
the-
jumps forward, doesn't it? It does. Once he gets out of the hospital, then
Yeah.
we start.
Yeah.
Time progresses.
It's interesting as well that they're showing clips from Rocky 1 that you will see when it goes to Rocky 2 that the advances in, say, the higher budget, the fight is a lot more elaborate. You can see the crowd,
Absolutely
move,
right.
things like that.
Well,
It's-
Rocky 1 was made for $1 million.
Yeah.
Rocky 2, $7 million. So
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a
a
big.
huge increase.
It's still low budget. It's still a low budget in the 70s. It's still not huge, but
I would love to
a
know
big
how much,
increase.
how much
Absolutely
of that
right.
money was actually Stallone's. How much did he reckon he demanded for this? Did he demand them out with obviously being a director of this film as well? Did he Did he have a bigger pay packet? Was this
Yeah,
in his career where he actually could demand?
You think a lot of that might have been increased wages? I guess it would have been
Yeah.
tough to get everybody back as well. That was one of the big things with the sequel, is that it has everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Everybody from the
most
first
of them,
film.
if we think about it, is that a lot of the characters do reoccur
Yeah.
from even the bigger roles of Adrian. You know, Apollo's trainer, Tony Burton, he's the only
Yeah.
one besides
Burt
Burt Young
Young,
that's
yeah,
in every
that's
single
true.
one. So they did get most of the people back.
That's
You know,
true.
but obviously they got salaries to pay. You know,
There
bumps
is
on the
another
budgets.
person, and I'll talk about him later when he
Later,
comes on
okay.
the screen, who's in all 6 films, who's never mentioned.
He's never mentioned.
Yeah,
right,
but he's-
and it's
that-
not Spider Rico.
No, it's not Spider Rico.
Is that the dog? Is he in all 6 movies?
No,
he's in
no,
the first
no.
couple. Good,
Isn't the dog actually Stallone's real dog in real life or something?
Yeah,
Or
wasn't
is
it
It
it-
was
first
at
two?
the
Yeah,
time,
Would have been,
yeah.
wouldn't it?
yeah, Butkus.
There
Yeah.
What
we
about
go.
the Turtles? Because I think I read somewhere that he actually did a charity event after this movie and gave the Turtles away to this.
Was
sort
that
of-
the Philadelphia Museum
yeah,
or something?
Philadelphia
yeah.
Museum is quite interesting. Here we
Maybe
have-
that's why they disappear in Rocky 3. That's why they're not there. But then
we
in,
have
in,
iconic
in-
sequences of Philadelphia where, you know, it's kind of part of the character of Rocky in the films. You know, 'cause Philadelphia is a vital part of
It's definitely
the
a
movie.
character. Yeah, you know, obviously we'll see in the montage.
This is
and
proper
things.
Absolutely right.
70s vibe though, into the kind of music,
Yeah.
just the tone of the grittiness of it, the music, all that brass and everything.
That's a good point, Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, this is grit.
Yeah.
This is sort of.
and they lost their way a little bit, didn't they? I
Yeah.
think particularly Rocky 3 and Rocky 4, they became so slick
Veneer,
and super
yeah.
stylized, which in a way reflected the character of Rocky at that time period. He was more successful. Do you think that you were just talking about Philadelphia as a character in the film? Do you think the Rocky sequel suffered, particularly Rocky 3 and Rocky 4,
We're not
from
being
taking
in-
him
yeah,
outside
of
of Philadelphia?
Yeah.
I think Stallone did, didn't he? Which is why with 5 it was this big thing about him losing all his money and going back.
Yeah,
Interesting, 5 seems like the worst one.
Oh yeah.
definitely the worst one. I mean, we may as well talk about it. This is actually my favourite of all
Oh yeah.
6.
I think this is
Of all
easily
6, including
Of
the
all
first
6.
one.
Including the first one?
I think we're all kind of split in this decision. I mean, obviously the first one is my favourite.
Are we saying you can't include the first one?
can't
because
include
of
the first one, yeah.
Which is the best sequel, we'll say.
For me, I would have to say
But
number
I
3.
actually like this better than the first one.
You're crazy.
No,
Number 3 is my favourite. Dave?
2
Number
is
2.
my favourite.
you like it the same as Stu, don't you?
yeah,
More than the
I love
first
the
one.
film. Yeah.
And I
We'll
think
perhaps
that
talk about
came
that
into the
later,
decision
why?
of actually doing number 2. Number 3 being my favourite and number 4 being Tom's favourite.
No, my favourite. Apart if it's we're not having the first
Balboa.
one. I think Rocky Balboa is the best.
Do we
best
do
sequel.
we include Balboa as well?
Yeah.
I'm confused now. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think Balboa probably is the best.
I think it's the best.
Yeah.
After the first one, I think it's the best film.
And I think even
It's got
though
Oh wait, this has got my favourite line in it coming up. Two of my favourite lines in cinema come from Rocky 2, and this is one of them. And I think it displays kind of Stallone's wit, and it's been kind of the central thread of all the Rocky movies is his sense of humour. And he has that in real life too. I think he's there you go. He says, "What do you think after going 12 rounds with Apollo Creed?" He says, "I think that I should have stayed in school." I think that's very funny.
that is funny.
I think this is why I prefer the Rocky films to the Rambo films because he's vulnerable, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's like a blue collar guy. He's real. He's not like
Sure.
superhuman. He's fallible.
Well, in the original Rambo film, he's very vulnerable as well,
Yeah,
isn't he?
in
I
the
think
original
we
he is,
talked
yeah,
about it
yeah.
in the commentary,
Yes.
but he becomes kind of a robotic Superman, doesn't he, in the sequels?
but we talk
I
about
guess he does in
yeah,
Rocky
but
though, doesn't he, to
It's
a
the
certain
it's the
extent?
same though,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it kind of comes full circle because you know the sequels as they went on the Rocky films weren't as good, but then you get to number 6 Balboa and it's brilliant again, isn't it?
Go back to
You know,
basics.
and
yeah.
it's the same with Rambo. Do you know what I mean? After 3, it was a bit tiring.
Yeah.
You did Rambo, and it was brilliant. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I
I
don't
would say
wanna-
he was as
yeah.
vulnerable as
Yeah.
he's still, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to detract too much from what you said as well, but when
Yeah.
you talk about the success in the movies, like how they do differ in quality, there's an interesting interview that Stallone did on the Jonathan Ross show, a UK, what do you call him, like
A talk
TV
show?
talk show
Talk
host,
show, yeah.
in 2008 when he was doing the Rambo
Oh, yeah.
what do you
Impression.
call it? Yeah.
Promotion.
And
yeah.
he actually gave the first Rocky film 10 out of 10.
no
which is-
ego involved.
Which is, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the second he gave 7.5.
He gave Rocky 2 7.5.
Yeah.
That's-
The third, which is my personal favourite, he gave 9.
he thinks
Really?
3 is better than 2.
Two, that's crazy.
And
That's crazy.
Rocky 4, he gave 7.5. And any guess to what he gave to Rocky
I
5?
know he gave Rocky 5 0.
0 out of 10. Yeah, 0
Yeah.
out of 10.
0 out of 10.
0 out of
But
10.
what's funny about Rocky 5? I mean, I know I'm the guy who sticks up for films that don't do that great, but I think Rocky 5's got a lot going for it, and I love Stallone. I love his movies, and I think he's got a